broke the vase, Yuri! You must have done it! I didn't do it.
Light, love feels close, but slips out of sight. When crown meets crown, will they let her rise or break her wings?
Where crown meets brown. A shadow crossed the king's expression as he recalled the past. He spoke of the war with the Ming dynasty, of how Park's father had died during that turbulent time when he himself was still crown prince. His sacrifice, he said, could never be forgotten. It was out of honor and gratitude that he had allowed Park the freedom to travel the world and live as he pleased. But now, the time had come for him to decide his position in court. Park lowered his head respectfully, his voice calm yet unwavering as he expressed his gratitude. However, he declined once again. The king's gaze hardened slightly as he reminded him that time was running out and that this offer existed only because of a promise he had made, to protect Park's family and their lineage. Park responded with quiet confidence. He acknowledged the king's mercy, but assured him that he was capable of protecting his own family. Still, as a gesture of goodwill, he offered to allow the royal army to continue using his grounds for training. The king gave a slight wave of dismissal. Understanding the audience was over, Park bowed deeply before stepping backward, maintaining his respect until he reached the door. Only then did he turn and leave. Back at the Park residence, preparations were already underway. The maids moved swiftly, arranging one of the largest quarters for the arrival of Park Han-jo and his family. By the time they arrived, the household was ready to receive them. Their granduncle and his family entered with an air of importance, his wife, their daughters, and several personal maids in tow. The eldest son appeared to be around 17, carrying himself with confidence, while the youngest, she's about 13. Having struggled with delayed childbirth, their parents had cherished these children dearly, perhaps to the point of indulgence. Their wealth was evident in every detail: their extravagant clothing, the fine fabrics, and the abundance of luggage that followed them inside. From the training ground, Yu-ri watched their arrival in silence. Her face betrayed no emotion, but her thoughts were far from neutral. She had met them once before, years ago, when she was just 5. Even then, she remembered clearly. They had been spoilt, rude, and unkind. Perhaps their mother had been an exception, but that mattered little to her now. She was no longer that timid child. "Fight me," the soldier said lightly. She nodded. What began as play became something else. She moved instinctively, blocked, dodged, countered. Even the soldier hesitated, until his blade stopped at her neck. Dead. She dropped her sword, but she smiled, because deep down she knew she would be better as she gets older. Days later, the palace shimmered with quiet power. Crown Prince Un-soo sat in his chamber with his personal maid, Dong-suk, restlessly planning his next move. He was tired of being confined within the palace walls and longed to visit the town center once again. Together with his trusted attendant, Enoch, he quietly discussed how he might slip out unnoticed. Their plans, however, were interrupted when a senior maid from the Queen Dowager, his grandmother, announced her arrival. She informed him that the Queen Dowager had requested his presence immediately. The Crown Prince smiled to himself, sensing that his earlier punishment for sneaking out might finally be over. Upon arriving at the Queen Dowager's palace, he bowed respectfully and greeted both his grandmother and his mother, the Queen, before taking his seat opposite them. They spoke at length about his studies and, with gentle concern, about his safety and past mischief. The Queen Dowager, clearly fond of him, offered him his favorite snack, while his mother watched quietly, her face glowing with pride. The Queen herself was known throughout the palace as a gentle and peaceful woman, a reflection of her humble origins. Because she did not come from a noble background, many of the council members and governors withheld genuine respect from her, offering only what was required out of fear of the king. Despite this, she held a special place in the king's heart. He had fallen deeply in love with her and, with the support of his mother, the current Queen Dowager, had married her, elevating her from commoner to crown princess, and eventually to queen. However, royal politics demanded more than love. In order to secure his power and position as king, the crown prince's father had been compelled to form a strategic alliance. He married the daughter of the Minister of Defense as his first-rank concubine, So-na. Her family was powerful and had supported him during his father's reign, continuing their loyalty during a time when he himself nearly lost the throne and was pressured to abdicate. Their backing ensured his survival and eventual stability as king of Joseon. In return, he honored the alliance by bringing their daughter into the royal household. Though such political tensions simmered beneath the surface, the king deeply loved his son, the young crown prince. The queen, however, was unable to bear more children and had only her son, now 15 years old. The first-rank concubine, Kim So-na, was a cunning and ambitious woman. Though she presented herself kindly before the king, she harbored deep resentment toward both the queen and the queen dowager. Unable to produce a male heir, she grew increasingly bitter. She had 2 daughters, Kim Nana, the eldest, a calm, beautiful, and kind 13-year-old, and Kim Jondi, aged 10, whose spirited and troublesome nature sharply contrasted with her sister's gentle disposition. After leaving the Queen Dowager's court, the Crown Prince chose to take the longer route to the palace library, intending to study. As he walked through the palace grounds, a procession of 12 maids and several guards followed closely behind him, a constant reminder that even in his desire for freedom, he was never truly alone. At the park's residence, the atmosphere was filled with quiet excitement as everyone prepared for an important visit. They were all dressed beautifully, their garments carefully chosen to reflect both elegance and respect. The occasion was a special one. The Grand Queen, an old and cherished friend of their grandmother from childhood, had invited her to the palace for a long-awaited visit. Their grandmother, pleased and slightly nostalgic, decided to bring the girls along, as well as their stepmother, Shin Tae-ra. It was not just a visit, but an opportunity to strengthen ties and present the family well within the palace walls. The girls dressed up beautifully. When the Park family arrived, even the air felt different, heavier, watchful, as though every step was being judged. They were led into the presence of the Grand Queen and the young Queen. Immediately, they bowed deeply in respect, their movements graceful and practiced. The Grand Queen's face lit up with warmth as she saw her old friend. What began as a formal greeting quickly softened into genuine affection. They exchanged warm smiles, and their laughter carrying hints of shared memories from years long past. The young queen, poised and gentle, welcomed them kindly, her presence adding to the calm dignity of the room. They were soon seated, and attendants placed delicate teacups filled with herbal medicine before them. The faint aroma rose into the air, soothing and earthy. As they held their cups, the conversation began to flow, soft, polite, yet filled with underlying warmth. It was a moment where formality and familiarity blended seamlessly. But gifts were presented one by one. Hae-ju stepped forward first, graceful as ever, offering her delicately embroidered handkerchiefs. The queen smiled warmly, admiring the fine detail. Mi-rae followed, lifting her chin slightly as she presented elegant hairpins imported from Qing. There was pride in her eyes, and something else. Competition. Then, Yu-ri. A brief silence filled the room. Mi-rae's voice slipped in, sharp and soft. I hope you remembered to prepare something this time. Yuri did not respond. She simply stepped forward, opened her box, and revealed two bracelets. They were handmade, simple but striking. Deep red beads woven with precision, carrying a quiet elegance that demanded attention rather than begged for it. "I made it myself," she said calmly, "for your majesties, who rule with grace and strength." The young queen's expression softened. Without hesitation, she wore it. That moment, small as it seemed, did not go unnoticed. Shortly, Princess Nana arrived at the Queen Dowager's quarters. Her presence was formally announced by a maid, and she entered with quiet grace. She bowed respectfully to the Queen Dowager and the young queen before offering a polite greeting to the guests. Her voice was gentle, yet carried the confidence of someone raised within the palace walls. The Queen Dowager smiled warmly at her, and, after a brief exchange, asked her to take the girls on a tour of the palace. The girls' faces lit up immediately with excitement. They rose at once, bowing politely to the princess, their curiosity already bubbling over. Together, they left the queen's wing and began their tour. Princess Nana guided them through the vast palace grounds with ease, her steps light yet purposeful. She showed them the breathtaking cherry blossom garden, where soft pink petals danced in the breeze, creating a dreamlike scene. From there, she led them to the grand library, its towering shelves filled with countless books and scrolls. She pointed out the royal kitchens, where meals for the entire palace were prepared, and gestured toward the king's palace, standing in dignified silence at a distance. As they continued, she spoke of the prison grounds and the interrogation rooms, her tone growing slightly more serious. Then she brightened again as she introduced the assembly hall, where important decisions shaping the kingdom were made. The sheer size of the palace left the girls in awe, their eyes constantly wandering, their voices filled with wonder as they whispered among themselves. But as the tour went on, Yuri's interest began to fade. While the others listened attentively, she found herself drifting, her mind wandering. Eventually, she turned to the princess and politely asked where she might find the restroom, using it as an excuse to slip away. Her sister immediately offered to go with her, concern flickering in her eyes, but Yuri quickly refused with a small smile. She assured them she would be fine and encouraged them to continue the tour without her. Princess Nana, though slightly hesitant, gave her clear directions. She added that if Yuri happened to get lost, she could simply ask for the music hall, as that would be their final stop. Yuri nodded and quietly took her leave. As she walked alone through the palace corridors, a sense of relief washed over her. The chatter and formality faded behind her, replaced by a rare and peaceful silence. After a while, she stopped, exhaling softly, a faint smile forming on her lips. For the first time that day, she felt free. Then, a memory surfaced. She recalled catching a glimpse earlier of a room with no locks. Drawn by curiosity, she retraced her steps. The palace felt different when one walked alone. Quieter, colder, more dangerous. Yuri wandered without direction, curiosity pulling her deeper until she found it. The room. Its entrance slightly hidden, but the door was not locked. One push, and she opened the door. She stepped inside cautiously, her eyes widening almost instantly. The room was filled with extraordinary items: swords encased in glass, ancient artifacts, treasures behind glass, ancient weapons. Her breath caught. She stepped in carefully, her eyes wide with wonder. Shelves lined with historical books. Everything seemed to carry a story, a piece of time preserved within those walls. Slowly, she moved deeper into the room, her gaze darting from one object to another. She reached out instinctively, but stopped herself just in time, careful not to touch anything. Completely lost in admiration, she didn't notice the presence behind her. It was only when the silence shifted that she realized she was no longer alone. Mirei had entered the room. Lost? Mirei's voice. Sharp, unwelcome. Yuri sighed. Do you follow me everywhere? Mirei stepped closer, folding her arms. I just wanted to see what you would do, when no one is watching. Yuri brushed past her. I don't need an audience.